Robert ShedLog for Sunday the 14th of March 2021. Hello, I'm Robert and welcome to my shed. I have been making a beautiful business card holder for my cards, and as you can see I've made two of them. So I was on YouTube, I saw a nice video on a nice interesting make, and I was bored at my desk, so I thought I'd try that. To see how I got on, we first have to go back in time. Back in time, Saturday the 20th of February 2021. I best be quick before I come back. I don't want to meet my earlier self. Now, this is 100 business cards. They measure exactly 51 millimeters, 51.2 millimeters, and that is enough to know that each one is half a millimeter thick. Now, I'm looking to use 6mm plywood, which will give me 12 business cards in a case, or 24 if I do two of them. So that gives me a reasonable size scale. Now, I've got this wonderful piece of beautiful, beautiful face wood. This is known as Tigerwood as a common name. It's got a crack in it, so I got it cheap. And I'm being locked down, I had to get it posted here. But 3mm of solid veneer should make a beautiful casing for the outside of the cards. My plan is to lay them out 1, 2 for the back and 1, 2 for the front, and that will give me 4 pieces so that I can make 2 card holders. Now, thinking about this, the card has a fixed height and a fixed width, and I want to know how thick to make it. So I was thinking about that and wondering what else fits in one's pocket without spoiling the line, has a fixed width and height. Well, width and height that will fit in the pocket and maximizes the volume while minimizing the thickness. And I came up with the idea of a hip flask. Now, hip flask uses a curve to maximize space, and this has a curve on it, which I can't get rid of because it's a natural wood. It's bowed. Veneer wood bows when it dries out, so that's going to be there forevermore. But I can use the curve to my advantage in the same way a flask does, by making it thinner in the pocket by following the curve of the body. Whilst also, because the curve isn't huge, it's not going to worry the card at all to be moved through that sort of angle. Okay, if I store them there for a long time, it might come out with a slight curve on it, but less than so than if I put it straight into my wallet. So I think I'm quite happy with that. Right, so card 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to maximize space because I want a little bit of wiggle room for the card. I want space for the frame at the edge, and I also want a little bit more space for sanding. So I'm going to just cut this into 4 and make the 4 pieces as big as possible. The first thing is to measure it out. If I put this, okay, and I also want to cut away the split, because that's a bit of an issue. So I'm going to take this piece of veneer, put it here, and just make sure that I'm square on the other end. Because 3 of the 4 corners are square, which means that this edge is not square, it's not straight. I'll be cutting that away as well. And I'm going to mark that out with a knife, hoping that this actually makes a mark on the wood. Just grab the corners just in case it doesn't. Okay. So step 1 is cut down that line. In fact, though I can feel the line, I can't really see it because the wood is so heavily patterned, so I'm just going to take my carpenter's pencil and just draw in that line. Why carpenter's pencil? Because it's what I have to hand. A 4H would probably be better. With a thinner point. Right, so that's just that line there. I don't know how well that's going to show up on camera. Next is to cut that line. Okay, so I was sawing through the wood, and basically I marked out a straight line down here, ran off the line a bit, started cutting back towards the line, and it just tore off along this grain. So this is not going to be so easy to work as I thought, and there's another tear coming right down there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it in half this way first, because that's cross grain, that's unlikely to tear. I can then work on bring the pieces to the right width. That is what I shall do. So this is 229 thick, so I've got 23, 12 and a half. Again, it doesn't have to be exact because I'll be playing it up anyway to make them the same size. Start there. And put that away. And yeah, I've never worked with Tigerwood before. I didn't realise it was quite so brittle, but apparently it is. So I've got a line, so I might as well use it. Now this one will cut across the grain without tearing out, and because I'm too far this way, I'll cut it on that side of the line. Because the line's across the grain, I can actually see it as well. Right. So yeah, again, more tear out at the bottom. Right. Going to put that away. Let's just plane that up nice and neat, as neat as I can, and then take it from there. Make it a bit easier to work with. I'm not doing anything. Okay, so that's going to be good enough, I think. I'm a little bit concerned about cutting this to size now, given how easily that ripped apart. But that's two pieces, and they're both more than big enough to do the job. So can I cut this in half without ruining it? I think I probably can, but I probably need to use different tools, i.e. a knife. It's better. Okay. That was actually faster than cutting it by hand. Okay, so that's definitely two pieces in the right orientation that I can use. Good. Good, so that's 4 pieces. Whew. Okay, it's now Sunday the 21st of February, and I've got these pieces cut out, and some of them, well, that's the worst of them. A little bit of tear out at the top there, and I'm going to bury that inside and hope no one notices. A couple of the others have bits of tear out on the edges, but that's fine because I'll be taking those off. They're all longer than they need to be. So, the intention is to take these pieces, and that's the top, that's the bottom. I'm going to place this on the side like this, and there'll be a piece at the bottom and the top, and this card will just sit in here quite nicely. Maybe I have to reduce it a little bit in size to make a comfortable fit. and then I need to cut off the top at that sort of angle to make the housing. And I could do that with a curve or anything like that. I'm not quite decided yet. And there needs to be a hinge here, and it needs to actually close. So I want that to be considered carefully. The first thing is to make this into a proper box, and I was thinking I want to round the corners to make it fit more nicely in my pocket without snagging. And if I round the corners of plywood, I'm going to reveal the end grain, which has obviously the characteristic plywood texture of stripes. So this is a box joint box. Just thinking this is the last time I did something nice with plywood end grain. It's not the best box. Well, it is the best box joint box I've made. It's the only one I've made, but I could do it better now. Also got better measuring tools and so on. But this is interesting because you get the contrast going through it. You can see there's joinery involved. So I thought what I could do is, because this is so thin I can't get most of my tools in to make a proper box joint, but I could do a half lap joint, which would look quite nice on the corner. And when you round it off, you'll see it will go from flat to merging, seeing part of one piece of the wood to sewing the other part, and you'll see the joinery there, and it'll all be stripy and pretty in the corners. And it's also all quite subtle because you'll have this slight texture against this colouring. Now, I don't know if this is going to be big enough. Trying this one, you only just get enough space for a card in there, and I'm just not 100% happy with it. It might work. There's no leeway. Whereas this one is good. There's lots of space for things to rattle around a little bit. So I'm going to do this one first, and if it all goes horribly wrong, I'll go back to this one as a sort of backup. Okay, so the next thing is to make these pieces of plywood into a little box. And I need to figure out how to do the hinges and make a lid. There has to be a lid of some kind somewhere. So watch this space. Saturday 6th of March 2021, it's time for the glue up. So what I've done is I've taken these three pieces, I've clamped these two to the bench, this one's loose, and that can let me get these nicely fitting a right angle, and also make sure I can fit the card in the slot quite happily. What I need to do now is to glue it up. Now I want the glue to look as flush as possible, so what I've done is I've filed down a piece of beech ply to make some sawdust, which I'm being very careful with, or file dust I suppose, very fine dust. And I'm going to use that in the gaps, and I've got some clamps to keep everything in order. So hopefully this should be a relatively simple job. I've decided to glue it up in two steps. First is glue the frame together, second is glue the frame onto here. I can then, onto the outer pieces, I can then file those pieces down separately. The reason for doing it two steps is just to make absolutely sure that everything's at a right angle, because if I did it all at once, I wouldn't be able to clamp anything to anything else. Everything would end up at the wrong angle, and that wouldn't be fun. So it's a half up joint, so I need to do this side, and this side. Same on the other end. Okay, so relatively nice even coverage. dry my hands. Add as much dust as I can into the joint. I was considering just mixing glue on here, but dust should help it. Let this settle in. The point of the dust is just purely cosmetic. Make it look like absolutely flush. So when the glue settles, you will see the glue will become clear, but you'll still see the sawdust. Okay. Relatively clean. That's the other reason for doing it, because I can clean these joints afterwards. So now I'm going to clamp these down, try and get some pressure on them. These aren't the biggest clamps. I'm going to get a huge amount of pressure out. Just hoping it's going to be enough to hold. These are relatively simple pieces. It's not like this is load bearing. So I won't be getting the screw clamps out. Stick with the excess. And add a bit more sawdust on here. Seeing this down, it should look like it's absolutely flush and smooth. As indeed it should be. 7th of March 2021, and this has come out of the frame. Now this is wobbling a little bit. There's nothing keeping this the right width apart yet, but I think that works reasonably well. I've tidied up the edges to remove any excess glue, just I can't do in the next step. So I've got my pieces of wood. I've decided which way is inside, which way is outside. This is the front, this is the back, and I'm just going to close that up, and I'm actually going to put a little spacer in the middle here. Just give me a little more tension so nothing moves, and make sure everything is at the right spacing. I'm going to move this outside the top, I think. And move that down so it's over the. So the idea is the top will be something like this, and it'll open up and close. Just click its way closed into the thing, and I can use the space in the middle of the slot to put cards in. So one bead of glue on there, plonk that on, one bead of glue on there, plonk that on there, and then clamp it all into this. I'm going to use the big clamps because I'm using small clamps for something else. And yeah, that should be it. That way up. Everything's got way up. I'm going to try and get as close to the top as I can because I want to. There's a bit of mess on the bottom. On both of these, and I just want to take that off before I finish it. And I just hope that when I glue it all up, nothing is going to end up splintering in the final tidy up. So, first things first, a dab of glue on along here. Now, normally with glue, you want an excess of glue and deal with the squeeze out at the end, but this time, I really don't want to squeeze out in the middle. Now, the guy who did this, the one that I based this on, solved this problem by using acetate. It's not acetate glue or super glue to do the glue up. I'm going to have some glue on the inside. I'm just going to resign myself to that. And my intention is just to try and get as much away from the inside edge as possible while still leaving it covered, so that I can, when it gets clamped down, I'm hoping that the bulk of the runoff will run out the way, but we'll see. So this goes near as top as I can. Pop it down. I can already see squeeze off on the inside. Best to take that out. Make sure I get it out as I can. That's tiny, tiny amounts, and it should all make everything rounded and nice, but even so, it's not ideal. Let's keep this in. I also want to keep this as close to the top as I can, spacer, so that I can get it out again. And along here, same again. Tiniest bead. Now it's not going to be a very strong joint because it's edge grain to face grain, but it's also not under particularly high load. I don't think this weighs anything. Move that on by mistake. And this goes to the top here. That's going to be the final top, I think. And I just have to file down the bottom. Right. Put that on top to add a bit more pressure. Bear in mind there's no glue on the top edge. It's just the sides. And clamp it up. And these wooden plates will translate the pressure evenly across the joints. Okay. I'll get as much as we can of the squeeze out. And not the right joint now. And the rest of it will have to Wednesday, the 10th of March 2021. This is freshly glued, just out of the clamps, and okay, I had a bit of difficulty with the top because it's catching on the side where the side is curved. It's starting to take on a little bit of a curve on the top there, which is what I wanted. It's barely visible. It's being held fairly straight by the bottom piece. I need to get this down to a sensible size. Now I was going to use a plane, but when I tried it on the test piece, that just exploded. Because this Tigerwood, 3mm Tigerwood flip very easily gets cut, chips along the grain. So I think what I'm going to do is use, it's rare for me to be using a power tool, but this is a Dremel. This is the number 207, I think, sanding bit, which is 60 grit. And I'm going to go and see what happens. Okay, that seems to be making its mark on the sandpaper, but it's also making its mark on the wood. And as you can see, it's taking out without any risk of it's actually burnishing the edge of the wood though, which wasn't expecting. Okay, I'm just going to keep going, I suppose. Okay, as you can see, that's left a terribly not straight edge, and I don't like the way it's basically stripped all of that all of that completely. So I'm going to have to do this in the vise. That's pretty close. Tied up the other sides in the same manner. This should work a lot easier because it's with the grain. Of course. Clamp it to the bench. I have a problem with the way this clamp is set up, and that only little grips about 2 inches from the top. Let's do this by hand. Okay, so that's not terrible. We're pretty close to the edge. I was going to round the corners, and I thought that's a good idea if I can figure out how to do it. The rest of it I'll do by the time-modern method of filing. So, right. Can't get it with the plane. Drop the microphone. Okay, so I'm fairly comfortable with that. That seems it's a good size in hand. It's no sharp edges. The corners are slightly rounded. They're not that you'd notice. It just looks like it's been worn, used a few times. There's a little bit of a sticking here, so I need to remove a bit of this edge, and I think I am going to do it with the Dremel actually. So, yeah, I can switch tools. This side. So let's start with 6 is a bit too coarse, I think. Start with 100 grit. Okay, let's go down to 150 grit. That should make it really, really smooth. First I'll take off this sandpaper marks now. Better. Okay, I mean that looks like a proper wooden, handmade wooden object, which indeed it is. So the next thing to do is to oil this. Now I've chosen to use teak oil, which is a mixture of oil and varnish. We'll clean the wood up quite nicely. Dusting first. I'm going to check the lid. Yeah, it looks fine. Just dust. I'll soak into the wood, bring up the grain, clean it up nicely, and hopefully we'll end up with a very nice finish. Now, I'm not entirely happy with that side. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. There's definitely marks on the edge from the planing that haven't disappeared. I don't want to call those texture. Just live with them. Because if I try and take them off, I'm going to end up reshaping it quite a lot. Okay. So to apply any kind of oil or varnish, the best thing to use is a rag. You first soak the rag. Any old scrap of cloth will do, really. Just be careful if it's cotton, because it can be very combustible when you're finished. Apply the oil. Beautiful rag that doesn't leave any excess, because it wipes it off as you're putting it on. If there is any excess, you need to wipe it off. If you don't, you will you'll lose it. If you don't, it will leave a mark. It will leave a mark. Bad. Okay, let's wipe off the excess. We have seconds to work it. Sure looks good when it's done. And that goes on there. And I've got a bit too much on the rag, I think, but tomorrow I might put on another, or in a couple of hours I might put on another coat. I won't access to leave between coats. It doesn't say. So I'm going to put this outside before it stinks the place up. And that should be it. Back to the present. That's it for ShedLog this month. Tune in next time for more shed action. Ta-ta! Back in time to Saturday the 20th of February 2021. I've got these business cards. Aren't they pretty? I'm not showing you the personal contact details for reasons of anonymity on the internet. Data security, that's a better phrase. Back in time, Saturday the 20th of February. Oh. Well, there's an issue. I was going to cut it there, I think I cut off all the problematic wood, but it's just split on that line. There was another crack. That's cracking on that line as well. And tearing there. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to get two out of this. Right,